Bingo Blitz rules.
If your bingo has ads in it,
That's not a bingo.
if it doesn't have the coolest tournaments, mini games, and the most breathtaking design,
Nope, not a bingo.
if your bingo moment makes you feel so excited that you just want to burst in joy and scream out loud, bingo! Sorry, so you're playing...
Bingo Blitz? Now that's a bingo. Go for a world of excitement with Bingo Blitz, the #1 free bingo game. Download Bingo Blitz and play for free.
Now that's a bingo.
70,000 people are here, and Bob Dylan is the reason for it.
Inspired by their true story.
If anyone is gonna hold your attention on stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
And starring Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan. He defied everyone
Turn it down!
Play loud!
to change everything.
Make some noise, BD.
Timothée Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro. A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
In 2005, two brothers hit the road to fight monsters. That road has led them to fighting demons, angels, and saving the world.
It's a journey that is taking them to heaven, hell, and back. But they aren't done.
Join our journey as we go episode by episode, following the adventures of Sam and Dean Winchester. We break each episode down with the writers, producers, directors, crew, and actors to bring you the behind-the-scenes stories of how this legendary TV series was made. That guy right there, that's Rob Benedict. He played God and Chuck Shirley.
Hey, and that guy there, that's Richard Spade Jr. He played Gabriel, Loki, and the Trickster. And P.S., he directed a bunch of episodes, too.
Now, while we are insiders, we're also outsiders, because we're not experts. This is our first time watching the entire series, all 327 episodes.
Rich and I have met many of the fans at conventions around the world, and we are deepening our understanding of why you all love this series so much. Because it's really good.
Yeah, it is. Now, listen. There will be spoilers, so consider yourself warned.
And thank you for joining us on this trip we call Supernatural Then and Now. Hi, everybody. This is Rob Benedict.
And I'm Richard Spate.
And we're talking about Season 6, Episode 14, Mannequin 3, The Reckoning.
One of, if I dare say so, the weirdest titles of a Supernatural episode ever.
Definitely. I was confused from the title forward.
It's so true. But also, didn't you for a split second? I mean, that title doesn't hold up well because it's assuming the audience knows there was a movie called Mannequin and Mannequin 2.
Right.
Which is not, at this point, movie titles that hold up to...
Right. And sometimes the shows will make a reference to something going on. Is this the one where he talks about going to Jersey?
Yeah, seeing Mookie or Scoopy.
Pookie, Scooper. Snooky, that's it. Which was a big deal at the time, but now it's like...
Maybe Snooky. Maybe not Snooky. Maybe it's Snooker. I don't know.
I don't know. Or Snooker. Isn't that the game that's kind of like pool? Kind of like billiards?
Exactly right. It was Snooker.
Anyway... Speaking of billiards, we wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who listens to the podcast. We just got back from, a run of conventions, but most recently Nashville.
Nashville, Tennessee, my hometown.
That's right. And everywhere we go, people say, hey, we like listening to the podcast. And we really love hearing that. So
yeah, people do really respond well.
Yeah.
When I say, or Rob says, who listens, lots of hands go up, get lots of comments, and we appreciate that. Tell your friends.
Yeah.
You know, if you got Supernatural fans in your friend group, and they might not be aware because every now and then we mention it and people say, what? There's a podcast.
Well, I know a lot of the podcast machines out there have a place where you can say rank the podcast. So go ahead, if you like the podcast, give us a good rating, tell your friends, and you can support the podcast directly by subscribing through Apple or Patreon. So if you have the means, please subscribe.
And you'll be glad you did because we make it worth your while with early releases of podcasts and other video clips and other tidbits that only you get to see as a Patreon member.
Content, the kids call it.
That's the word.
Okay, so now Mannequin 3, The Reckoning. Let's go through what happens.
All right, Robbie, why don't you do that signature summary you're so famous for?
I will. Sam has passed out from the impact of recalling memories from hell. Remember the last time we saw him, he was all convulsing and...
on fire.
Yeah. So Dean revives him and warns him against trying to remember things from the past 18 months.
Don't do it. That's a very specific time frame, too. Listen, you can go back 19 months before.
You're fine.
That's open season. But 18 months, Starting from this day backward, no,
Don't
sir.
think about it. To get their minds off it, the brothers go to investigate a death in Paterson, New Jersey. A janitor named Steve was found dead in a locked lab at Great Falls Junior College. Soon, another death occurs. This time, it's the night watchman at a clothes factory in the next town over. While investigating, Sam uses his EMF meter. Okay, first of all, this thing, it looks like one of those hand video games we had in the 80s, like with the cover ripped off.
Yeah.
And just like a battery in the back. So it's so pretend. It's not
But isn't
real.
that the thing he's always used, or is that a different one? Because
I
at
don't
one point they
know.
have one where the arms come up.
Yeah.
But this is not that one.
Every time he uses them, they look a little fake to me. But yeah, I was like, oh boy, we're using this again. And I know they're, and I've seen the real ones. Like Chad Lindbergh has one. He floats around. It looks a little more real. This just looked like a thing with lights on it, like beep beep.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And hey, listen, we kind of leapt forward. It just says, the janitor named Steve. Steve was found dead. But let's talk about that because that was the teaser.
That was the
Like-
teaser where a life-size mannequin
Like the mannequin you see in a doctor's office
in a
or
science
medical school
right,
that has no skin. Epidermis is
Right.
gone.
right,
And you're seeing
right.
the muscular and tendon structure of the human.
Yeah.
Right. In 3D.
Yeah.
So that thing, that was cool, I thought.
Yeah.
They show that thing and that thing coming to life,
Uh-huh.
the way it kind of became real was really cool.
That one worked. Yeah.
And I was hoping for more of that.
Yes.
I was soon to be disappointed.
Same.
But
same.
that one part was really cool.
It was done really well, and even when they go to investigate in this scene we're talking about now, like it's kind of spooky the way it's kind of looking at Sam, and Sam looks at it, but
Yeah.
it doesn't totally register. Well, his pretend EMF meter gets a reading off one of the mannequins in the factory.
Right.
Then soon another death occurs. This time it's the night watchman at the clothes factory in the next town over. While investigating, Sam uses that pretend little EMF meter thing, and it gets a reading off of one of the mannequins in the factory. Now, these are mannequins more traditionally, although they've got no eyes, and they're really odd looking.
Yeah. They look like crash test dummies. more
Crash
than they
test
look
dummies.
like mannequins.
If someone from the band Trash Test Dummies hooked up with the Blue Man Group, this is what they get.
And you know what would happen when they were having when they were doing the grown up to propagate?
What?
One of them would be going, ha, ha, ha. If you know the song, you get the joke,
Yeah,
right?
the Crash Test Dummies.
Once there was a girl who.
Look it up, kids. Look it up. The meter also got a reading off of the anatomy dummy at the junior college. So Sam thinks that a ghost might be possessing these figures.
And by the way, for people who look up that song, and I really do hope you will because it's a trip, the song is actually called. It's like M.
Yeah. Okay. So back to Supernatural. So, however, it's confusing because these two incidents occurred in two different towns.
Different towns.
And ghosts usually stick to one location.
Yep.
They don't travel. So suddenly, Dean gets an urgent call from Ben, the boy that's the son of
kid.
Lisa, his sort of wife, girl, lady friend. There is something wrong with Lisa, and she needs his help.
Yeah.
Dean races over, leaving Sam to investigate on his own. And Sam, encourages him to go. Sam wants him.
Yeah, he's like, go live your life.
Yeah, you go address your past, your last 18 months.
Because Dean was really blowing off her call. He was ghosting her pretty hard. That was back in the time when people didn't know what the word ghosting meant in terms of communication. But
Right.
He was doing it. He was ahead of his time.
Yes. Coincidentally, Sam is looking for a ghost.
I know. They were both ghosting in their own weird way.
So Dean races over to Lisa, leaving Sam to investigate on his own. When Dean arrives at Lisa's house, he only discovers that she is about to go out on a date.
With a doctor.
She's all dressed up, yeah. And Lisa and Dean have a heart-to-heart. Even though they care about each other, the relationship just isn't working. Ben accuses Dean of abandoning the family. Well, he's not wrong. Here's a question, though. So he said we've been parent-trapped, but she was really going out with the doctor?
Yeah.
So it's not really a parent trap.
Well, it is, isn't it? Because it's the old oh, I see what you're saying. It should be
Like-
she's all dolled up thinking Dean's coming over for her, or she thinks somebody else is coming over.
And it's Dean. Yeah.
Right. No,
So was there...
it's a parent half trap.
This is where the part of the episode turns for me. I really started to get confused.
This is where it started to turn?
Well,
Oh, man, rewind the tape. It started to turn for me real early.
With the second mannequin?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I was... Okay, so that confused me. Ben accuses Dean of abandoning the family, and then Dean there's a montage.
Dude, there's so many montages in this effing episode that I thought I was being jerked around.
I know. I thought I was being jerked around too.
This should be called Montage 3, The Reckoning.
Yeah.
And also that super weird shot when they go to back to the mannequin that shows all the human muscles and skeletal forms. When Sam and Dean are talking about it, they never show them. They just show a slow push in on the mannequin.
Yeah.
While they're talking about it. And they're like, I don't know, man. But they're having a normal Sam and Dean conversation.
Right.
And we're on this slow push in. There's so many slow zoom ins and push ins in this episode.
Yeah.
And about 4 montages.
Yeah.
Like there's a montage of like Sam and Dean looking up crap and shrugging. We can't find it. And then Sam and Dean, I don't remember the other montages are.
Well, then there's just a montage of Ben and Dean together, and there's a montage of Lisa opening doors.
Right. And then there's the weird like flashback of the guys. Well, we had this coworker, and he goes in this 5-minute thing about how they set up this.
Spoiler alert on our home and episode. Meanwhile, Sam has discovered that a year ago, a worker at the clothes factory, Rose.
At the clothes factory.
Rose went missing. He goes to interview her sister, Isabel. She described her sister as quiet and shy and an easy target for teasing.
Meanwhile, her sister was an easy target for the eyes.
She was a really good actress.
She was great. She was really good.
Sam sees a photo and discovers a connection between the two victims. Sam interviews more people from the factory and finds one person, Johnny, to be very nervous about the questioning.
Very nervous, very squirrely.
Very, very, very guilty. That night, Johnny's attacked, but Sam is there to intervene. Johnny confesses to Sam that he was part of an elaborate prank on Rose that resulted in her accidental death.
This is interesting, too, because when he retells the story, the telling of the story is longer than the actual series of days and weeks that it took them to orchestrate the joke.
The 2 previous victims were also part of the prank. Sam finds out where Rose's bones are buried. He salts and burns Rose's remains.
Which also makes no sense. Sam does not know this town, doesn't know where he is, can't take this guy with him. And he's like, it's over by the old Kopinski Bridge.
Well,
he goes and just digs up the rectangle.
He just goes, it's in the woods.
Yeah. Then he gets like off whatever road. You're like, well, that narrows it down.
Right.
But no, of course, immediately there's a perfectly, not like 30 holes dug around where he's like, damn it, can't find her. Goes right to it.
Now, at this point, when Johnny gets attacked, and you know, when all these victims get attacked, they get a cut in their head that starts bleeding, and then they get killed by a mannequin. Is there a mannequin there when Johnny gets attacked this time?
His sex doll.
Before we go to the sex doll.
Yeah, they're in the mannequin factory. But he pulls him into the break room and puts salt around it so nobody can get to him.
So after he burns his Rose's remains, he believes the haunting will stop. However, that night, Johnny's real doll gets possessed and kills him. Okay, so I need you to step in here. What's happened? Why? What?
Okay, I tell you. So here's what I figured out. I'm watching this, and of course I knew that something was going to go pear-shaped. There's no way Johnny was going to get saved.
Right.
And it goes to show you that I'm not really up on my real doll, I don't know, details. But when he walked in and he started talking to, we thought, a woman, and then turned out to be, I thought it was a mannequin. I'm like,
right, me too.
Oh, is he just insane? And he thinks that mannequins are people and maybe he's the murderer? Like, I was so confused for a second. And then that mannequin looked at him. I think it's a real doll.
Sex doll.
Yeah, being like a really realistic sex doll.
Yeah, that's not what it looked like. It looked like a mannequin.
It looked like a mannequin. And until you read right now, real doll, I didn't think of it as being a real doll.
Same.
I just figured it must be some weird. I honestly still thought until right now that he was just in love with the mannequins. And he was some.
And then I thought it had something to do with the girl who had died, and he had like her. Thought it was like her. I don't know. I was so.
Well, we find out that it's because the sister's in the bar, and wherever the sister's kidney is,
right,
the ghost can go.
So it's just the mannequin is a red herring. There just happen to be mannequins in the rooms where she's haunting.
Well, it's a red herring, but also she possesses mannequins. That's how she can.
Okay. Why? What's the link between her and mannequins?
She worked at a mannequin factory. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe because they have joints and she can.
Sure.
She can't become a ghost that does anything else, but she has to manifest herself or entrap.
Wow.
What do you call it? Embody a body.
Yeah. Well, high marks for her in ghost school. I don't know why the other ghosts didn't think of that.
And what a cool coinky dink that one of the guys has
a real doll
mannequin in his house.
Well, Sam is confused as well, so he speaks to Isabel further. And
take a number, Sam.
And it's revealed that Isabel has one of Rose's kidneys from a transplant. So Rose's ghost can go wherever Isabella is. They meet up with Dean, and the brothers decide to use hoodoo magic as a solution.
Who?
Do.
Wait,
Hoodoo.
Hoodoo?
Yeah, hoodoo.
You know what Hoodoo Magic? You know the soundtrack to, wrote the soundtrack to Hoodoo Magic?
Hoodoo voodoo?
The Hoodoo Gurus.
Hoodoo gurus. While discussing it, Rose's vengeful spirit possesses Baby.
Not a mannequin, so there goes our theory. Shot out of the water.
That's right. She tries to run Dean down as Baby. Unfortunately, Isabel gets fatally injured.
But by the way, tries to run Dean down at 17 miles an hour. Like,
Yeah.
like, oh no, look out. But he has plenty of time to run. Like that thing they don't hit the gas. They kind of go towards him.
Also,
with purpose.
so Baby crashes into a building, and then, Dean's like, sorry, Baby. And Baby crashes into a building, and then a piece of glass just happens to just puncture right where the kidney is.
Yep. And also, real weird question. Why when a ghost in haunting a car or when they're possessing a car and drives that car into a building, wouldn't the ghost still just be possessing that car, throw it in reverse and just keep going? I'm like, what did
I think so.
What did the ghost be like? Oh crap! Now I got to wait for the cops here. And
I think we're supposed to think. I think we're supposed to think that ruined the transmission or something. I don't know.
I guess.
So as Isabel is dying, the ghost of Rose appears and apologizes. A little late for that, Rose. Back at Bobby's, Dean works on the Impala. He feels bad that Isabel died and for the way he left Lisa and Ben. Sam reminds him about all the people they save, and that is your episode.
Okay, we're going to talk more about this episode, but we're going to do it during the segment that we all like to call Rob and Rich ratings.
Boy, oh boy, is this a confusing episode.
Let me tell you something, man. This is a turd of an episode of television. And I was all in as soon as that medical mannequin came to life. I'm like, that's cool. And when it looked at Sam and they had, whatever actor in a mask for it, and it looked awesome. I'm like, this is going to be dope.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the dopeness.
Yeah.
I didn't like any part of this episode. I could give two hoots about the Ben Lisa Jensen story. And this has nothing to do with the top shelf acting of Cindy Sampson, who plays Lisa. We love Cindy Sampson. She's great, friend of the podcast, and delightful in the role. It's just the storyline itself. Is weak. Not engaging. And this is really a really tough one, but I feel like I don't know what was going on. The weird montages were so bizarre.
A lot of montages.
Felt like not supernatural, and there was 3 of them. And then the flashback to the story.
Yeah.
I don't remember Supernatural doing a lot of flashbacks when they're telling the story of how somebody died. Usually we see it in the teaser and then it goes on and a ghost will show us or something. But this is like one of the first times I remember dudes just telling the story and we're then seeing it. Anyway, it didn't work at all. I just felt like there was no stakes in this episode whatsoever. Barring Sam waking up at the beginning.
Yeah, it's tough. There's an A storyline and a B storyline, and it felt like they're maybe trying to pack too much in. I don't know that the A storyline there were no stakes, and I don't know. I was really from the title of the episode, I don't know. The mannequin thing really threw me.
I thought maybe it was going to be a humorous one based on the title, and then. Dude, it just was drifting all over the place. I just couldn't.
The scene where the squirrely guy is in there with his real doll, which I didn't realize that's what it was supposed to be, but the real doll just looks like a plain old mannequin. It's over her shoulder and her head just turns to him and he's like, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff. You're like, I feel like they're making a joke, but they're not.
Yeah.
And there was all these weird push-ins. There was times where even the sound design was weird. Go with me here. There was a time where one guy bumped into a bin of mannequins and fell. And you would think there'd be a lot of noise of all the mannequin parts skittering across the concrete floor. And it made no noise. It made like a little bit of noise. And that struck me as weird. I never noticed that being weird. It's not like I am constantly looking for sound oddities.
Yeah.
That was there were just things throughout the episode that seemed so bizarre.
Yeah.
And like a different show. Just not supernatural. And the slow push-in camera use was so bizarre.
Yeah.
The montages were so bizarre. I don't know.
Yeah. And, all this is to say, we love all the people who worked on the show. It's not like it's a slide on anybody. Sometimes with a network television show, sometimes all the parts come together at the end and sometimes they don't, This one, it just didn't quite do it.
Even the way down to things that Supernatural does well didn't work here. Like the effect of Rose appearing as her sister was dying.
Right, yeah.
Looked ridiculous. And then she's like, sorry. Rose didn't look sorry at all.
She didn't look sorry. She did not look sorry, no.
She killed her sister. And could give a crap.
Yeah.
In her attempt to wreak havoc and vengeance on these guys, she took out her sister and doesn't care.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, also in that flashback, so Rose has a secret admirer, and so the guy's playing the joke on her, and the secret admirer says, "Meet me at this apartment." So Rose goes to the seedy-looking apartment, walks down the hall.
I thought that too. What, has Rose lost her mind?
And opens the door that's unlocked. to
I thought the same thing. Meet me at a guy's giving her a couple of roses, and it says, "Meet me at this downtown." I'm like, Rose is just itching to get killed. I mean,
I know, totally. Rose
is a death wish.
And then there's, the mannequin sitting at the table.
And also, those guys are such massive assholes that almost like after school special.
Oh yeah, totally.
Ha ha ha! Like all four of them come out of the woodwork. Yeah. Like what grown men would spend weeks doing this, and then when the girl who's half their size is like, "Get away," grab her violently by the arm. Hey, we're kidding. You jerk. Lighten up, Rose.
What do you take a joke, Rose?
And then you kind of go, the other guy's like, "We can't call the cops. They might think we did it." I'm like, "There's 4 witnesses, you dipshit." And it's like, she had a head wound from falling. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's just nothing worked.
Well, so what kind of beard do you give this?
Mr. Clean. Nothing. I ain't giving this a beard. This is a hairless person. This gets the Mr. Clean from Rich Spate.
I was thinking, for me, it's like when Prince changed his name to a symbol and then shaved it into his face so that it's a beard that's has a symbol in it. So it's not an actual beard. It just has a symbol that doesn't make any sense. And hey, I love Prince. He's like one of my all-time favorite artists, but I was confused as I was by this episode. I see it there. I see there's facial hair, but it's not a beard. And it's not a word I know.
I can't call you. I can't yell across the yard going, "Hey, come to dinner."
Hey, Symbol.
Hey, Symbol.
Yeah. So the episode formerly known as Supernatural.
Exactly.
So there you go.
All right.
Mr. Clean. I like it.
I was trying to think of the most hairless. I almost gave it that mannequin. It has so little hair. It has no more skin.
That's good. Yeah, give it the mannequin.
But I didn't know.
All right, well, we have a treat. We always love talking to this guest. It's Todd Aronauer.
Maybe Todd can shed some light on what the hell was going on in this thing.
I'm hoping he can. He's currently working on the final season of What We Do in the Shadows, one of my favorite shows, and the new comedy on FX and Hulu, The English Teacher. Todd was a producer on Supernatural from seasons 1 through 11. And now here's our conversation with Todd.
So pleased to have you back, Todd Aronauer. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again.
Always.
Dude, we have so many questions about this episode. I'm just going to tell you right out of the gate. Did you rewatch this one before we're doing this? Have you seen it recently?
Or do you remember?
I rewatched because we're doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
It is a weird one, man.
It sure is.
This is, so let's just start with office politics. What was the scuttlebutt in the office when this one was being worked on? Because it's Jeannot's first episode. I know you know Jeannot well.
Yeah, so do you guys.
So do we, yeah.
Did you know Jeannot before this episode?
No, it was the first time working with him.
Okay.
And he's an odd personality too.
Right.
Yeah. Well, explain that, because people don't how would you describe Jeannot as a personality?
He's a big ball of personality wrapped up in a little old man.
Little old French guy.
In a little man.
Yeah, he's got a really thick accent.
Yeah.
And he's full of energy. And what I most remember working with him every episode is he's in violent agreement. You guys are in a heated conversation about something and agreeing on the direction. He's just, I am in violent agreement with you.
Oh, that's funny. That's a funny way of expressing it. Yeah, Rob. So for backstory for other people out there listening, Rob Benedict and I worked with Jeannot not on Supernatural. Am I right in saying that, Rob? You didn't know him from
Correct.
Supernatural either, right?
Correct.
But he directed us on a show that Todd Aronauer was also involved with, which was
Criminal Minds Beyond Borders.
Beyond Borders.
Yes. The Gary Sinise one.
Yeah.
Gary said, every time I started to say it, I almost always say Beyond Boundaries, which makes us
That's the other spin.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. So he's a great guy, as you say, big personality, fun, funny, creative, and all this stuff. So this is such a bizarre story on every level.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the whole conceit of it is interesting, and the way it's handled is interesting. Just looking at the title, I thought it was going to be a funny episode. I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those like tongue in cheek, and it could be. In so much as it ends up with a guy with a sex doll and blah, 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 but it doesn't really go that direction. They kind of kept it in the serious lane. And maybe you will not know this, but was there an option to go either direction and they decided to keep it serious? I mean,
you're right. It takes an odd tone and it could be comedic. It just doesn't quite get there. And I think I recall when we were in editing, we were wondering the same thing. Is this are the jokes landing enough for it to be a comedic episode? Can we lean into it that way? Are the scares enough? And this episode was at a part of our schedule, episode 14, where we're kind of in the lull of the season, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some episodes where I got outlines ahead of time or arenas of the story ahead of time that kind of we focus on and need to research and need to get into early before we go to camera. And this wasn't one of them. There was a couple episodes right after that were kind of taking some of our research attention.
Right. Well, French Mistake is the next episode, so I know, and which is huge.
Yeah. That was a big one. That took a lot of time for research. This one was generally a straightforward episode that just has but a lot of quirkiness to it. A lot of things that you just don't expect, which add to it. Because otherwise it's just a pretty straightforward, pretty standard episode.
Well, yeah, and if you want to look at the Mannequin stuff as like maybe there was a comedy that was maybe missed the mark a little bit, you're also paired with the B storyline of Dean going back to the Lisa, which is straight up drama,
just straight up Hallmark drama, just straight up like the cue strings, the relationship that shan't be kind of.
Yeah, and you also want to see more from that. It's a lot of things getting thrown at this episode, but like not enough of any one of them,
right,
to draw that main attention. Because you want to see more of Dean and Lisa and Ben. You want to get more of that. Is this going to lead somewhere?
Right. And it doesn't.
And it doesn't. You want to hear more about Sam getting his shit back together. And
that's interesting. So that's a great point, because when the episode starts, that's when
it's all about
right?
that. Yeah.
And there's a really cool shot. The best shot in the episode is shot on Sam's eye and the remnants of flames in it as he pulls out. Great shot.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, this is going to be, boy, that whole train just stops immediately.
Yeah.
It's just not there. It just fizzles out, just like the fire in his eye. It's like we're telling the audience that, that storyline that we were leading up to. Forget about that.
Yeah.
This is Jensen, stopping in to say hey, and let you know that we've got to take a quick break. I'm about to pop.
Hey guys, it's Rob Benedict. Rich and I have traveled a ton around the globe for supernatural conventions, and we need two things when we're on the road. One, to be able to watch episodes of Supernatural so we can make this podcast for you. And number two, to access safe, reliable internet. So we use NordVPN. It allows us to watch Supernatural when it isn't available in the region by switching our virtual location back to the United States so we can watch episodes. Plus, it protects our private data like bank details, passwords, and online identity. And it protects our data while traveling and using public Wi-Fi. NordVPN protects you wherever you are in the world from viruses or malware. Also, hot tip, NordVPN can switch the virtual location, allowing us to save money by purchasing flights, hotels, and subscriptions from other countries at a cheaper price. That's smart, right? Well, to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com. That's nordvpn.com/supernatural. nordvpn.com/supernatural. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description as well.
You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Thanks for supporting Supernatural then and now. And now, back to the show.
So there wasn't more that didn't make the cut. It just wasn't there.
Yeah, not that I recall. No.
Interesting, man. It's a really trippy thing because it goes from that conversation to almost, again, I know we just said this, but almost humor. They make a Snooki joke. They're going to Jersey. I told Rob in our review of the episode, I got set for something that I was going to be a home run when there was the prop of the medical mannequin, like, with all the muscles and skeletal systems showing. And then that thing, whoever, they put a mask on, somebody to make it look like that thing came to life, was awesome. I'm like, oh, if this is the big bad for the episode, I am all in on this. But that's the only time we got that thing. In like a little snippet. Why?
And I remember the footage. We were trying to make the scary moments scarier, the jump scares scarier. And no disrespect to Jeannot or the script. It was just one of those where on the page it worked. The coverage was there, but piecing it together just didn't jump as much as it should have. There wasn't a lot of visual effects in this episode.
No, just kind of the mannequin stabbing looked like a bit of an effect. It looked like something.
Yeah. It was a speed effect.
Yeah.
And there were some other mannequin moments that we had to do some minor visual effects on just to try to bring the jump scares out a little more. Yeah, that moment with Dean right up against the mannequin's face.
Right.
We wanted to build tension there. And is something going to happen? Is it not?
Right. Will they, won't they?
Wait, what do you mean?
Exactly.
I'm not sure that was the...
he needs to forget about Lisa.
Which one are you talking about? What was the Dean mannequin face thing?
In the lab.
Yeah.
Right?
The first one.
Yeah, because there's that. I brought that up too, that slow push in past Dean onto that.
Mannequin eyes.
Yeah.
I didn't really get the will they won't they.
No, is it going to make it? Is it going to leap at him? Is it going to?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You feel.
I wanted it to.
Yeah.
That was such a cool. That thing was so cool. And the mask you guys made, or the makeup, or whatever, and then suddenly it was like, I'm like, oh, I want to see that guy.
I think that was a visual effect. Or enhanced by visual effects.
Trippy.
So, okay, we're at the second half of season 6, and we've got the Dean and Lisa thing. We're kind of back the way things were. Sam's got his soul back. We've got this whole storyline that we haven't really visited in a second, where it's Eve, the mother of monsters, has been awakened, and
oh man, Eve, we haven't talked about Eve in forever.
Right. So at this point, do you know, or did you know or speculate whether the Alpha Monsters and the Campbell storylines, where they were going to go? Do people know where this is ramping up to? Because we're sort of, like you said, this is the lull, and then we kind of build up to the end of the season.
I don't think we did because this was also the first season after
Eric
departed. So I think the writers probably had a better idea than what they were sharing with the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of fun episodes throughout the season.
Right.
So I don't think we knew. I don't recall knowing that that we knew where it was all going to come to fruition.
So your job is sort of, you kind of take it episode by episode, or, well, and you know what's coming up, but.
To an extent, I'm focused on the episode we're prepping, the episode we're shooting, the episodes we're cutting. Story-wise, I want to know what's coming up because that could affect how we edit or how we sound design an episode that we're currently working on. So knowing where the season is going to end, I don't necessarily need to know the specifics that sometimes the writers are working on up until we go to camera. But the outlines are certainly helpful. Knowing the basic structure of the season for a show like this is immensely helpful because a lot of it does come back. There are callbacks, whether it is sound design or even editing style. Characters come back, visual effects become legacy, and you want to see the same effect or the same stuff. So even dealing with visual effects, not necessarily in this episode, but if we know that a certain demon, a certain ghost, a certain entity is going to be in an episode, if I know that thing is coming back or that idea is going to grow into something else, then that also helps us R&D and figure out the design of that effect. And
right. Spend a little more time on it.
Yeah. If it's going to become something bigger.
From this episode specifically, was there a time concern? Because there's 3 montages in this thing, and Supernatural I don't think of as a montage show, but there were montages. So was that a way to fill time?
I am recalling, yes, I believe that was, and we had issues with that on a bunch of shows, and something that we found. I don't think we could get in trouble for this at this point. It's too far gone. But
what are they going to do? Fire us from the show?
There was a number of episodes throughout the show where we always wanted to deliver the best show that we could. We didn't want to have extra stuff in there just to get it to time if we didn't feel like it belonged in the show. So our initial cuts, we were always trying to make it as tight of a show as possible. And sometimes the running time would be a little long and we'd have to find places to trim. There were times where it was too short and we had to find places to extend it. We found that there were different delivery times, different target times between a domestic delivery and international, and one was longer than the other. So there were times we would deliver 2 different versions of an episode.
Wow.
Where the episode is the same. The difference would be international running time would be longer. So with an international delivery, we would deliver sort of we talked about recaps. So for the shorter ones for international, we would deliver post caps, basically what's coming up.
Right.
There were a couple episodes where I think there was one episode, it was just perfect timing. We did sort of a promo for the Ghostfacers DVDs that were coming out. Right. There was an episode we did sort of an infomercial commercial for...
It was like a joke made in the episode that then you have a pretend commercial for it?
Well, those burgers of the restaurant that they went to that gets everybody sick. But yeah, we did tacked on things at the end that were like 30 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever we needed to get us to the international delivery time. So yeah, content time, running time, that is always a concern. So the montages in this, rewatching it definitely, you're very correct in thinking that running time for this episode was a concern.
Yeah, because I do not think of Supernatural as a montage show. And they did the first montage of the guys looking up research, and it was one of those classic, like Sam typing a computer, then frustrated, and then Gene like looking through magazines, nothing here. And I was like, what are they doing? Yeah. What is going on? And that was one of 3.
Yeah.
As Rob liked to point out in our review, there's an entire sequence of Lisa just opening and closing doors, just opening doors to reveal Dean.
Yeah, even reusing shots that were in the episode.
It was
including the one you
shot
just
of her
saw.
opening the door of revealing Dean. It was about 45 seconds before the montage that had her opening that same door to reveal that same.
In case you missed it, here it is again.
And also, I like the fact that Dean's like Man, when I think about Lisa, think about all them doors. All those times she'd open the door, like just a minute ago when she opened the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're very right to pick that out.
That's hilarious.
What about the title sequence? Does that changes every year?
That changes every season. So it would generally be in the first 5 seasons, and Kripke would say, okay, this season it should be Fire and Brimstone. This season, the first one for the first season was actually something that Paul Karasik, who cut the pilot, was one of our editors throughout the first season. He just whipped that together during the pilot as just some sort of entry into it. It was not intended to be anything final. It was just a placeholder.
Wow.
Throughout season 1, we went through different incarnations of different possibilities of it, trying to build something similar to it. Even went so far as shooting material to create a full main title sequence.
Wow.
So there was a lot of stuff shot, and
yeah,
we actually engaged a company to put something together, which turned out really well. Phil went off and shot some stuff up in Vancouver. The company had shot some stuff, some really eye-catching graphic images, and was really cool. But we just ultimately, the consideration with doing main title sequences, and a lot of reasons why it's kind of gone away, is because it takes content time. It takes story time. So especially for a broadcast, you have a finite amount of time to tell your story. I think ours changed throughout the seasons, but I'm just off the top of my head, I think it was like 42
minutes,
20.
Right.
Yeah, 42 minutes, 20 seconds. And that includes credits, that includes logos.
Right.
And it includes the main title. So
right. So if you have a minute-long main title section, then that takes away from the story.
Cuts away from story time.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
What you'll see in a lot of other series that do have main title sequences, you might not catch it, but you also might see in some episodes it's shorter or longer than others. There might be a truncated version where if they need an extra couple of seconds, they'll have a shorter main title sequence to get more story content in there.
Yeah, you're right. You never really see it anymore in the streamers. You never see a big title sequence.
Yeah,
I kind of miss it. There's something about those old school, but maybe it's my youth, like a good solid theme song.
Well,
a little Barney Miller action. You know what I mean?
So what I said before about the saga cells, what the network wanted, selling the saga of the show. You recall a lot of theme songs from the 70s and 80s. Think of Gilligan's Island. Gilligan's Island song is a saga cell. It's telling you the story of the show.
Brady Bunch literally starts with, "This is the story."
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And that's why a lot of the theme songs from that era, it's telling the story.
So we talk about editing a little bit. This episode was edited by Tom McQuaid. What's the rotation of the editors like? It seems like there's a core 4 to 5 editors at this point.
Well, they're the on-staff people, I assume, right? You don't ever farm it out.
Yeah, every season we had 3 editors, 3 assistant editors. And they would rotate. They would cut every 3rd episode.
Okay.
So we generally would have an idea of who we wanted to cut the first episode to start the season.
I was wondering, if it worked for you want for the end and the beginning, so you just do the math backwards.
Yeah, exactly. But they generally kept that rotation throughout the season. Sometimes it might you might see where the rotation might go awry in the end, but sometimes we moved air dates. So we would still finish the episodes in order generally, or we might shoot an episode out of order, which in the end, when it airs, it looks like the editor rotation might have been altered. It generally stayed the same.
In real time. And the same editor works with the same assistant editor at all times?
Yeah.
They're a duo?
Yes. Yeah. And also sometimes the rotation might get disrupted if we have an assistant editor cut an episode. So Bruce Gorman cut an episode in our first season.
Oh, interesting.
And then all of our assistant editors that became editors for the show, Don Cook, he was an assistant editor before becoming an editor. Nicole, she was an assistant editor before becoming an editor. So cutting the recaps is their first step into the larger world of editing.
Okay, two things I want to touch on that you just mentioned. So Bruce, am I right in saying that he is an OG gangster? Like he was there for the pilot forward?
He came on midway through the pilot. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's one of the only people who Kripke, like it was like Kripke and then Bruce.
Yeah, but also some of our sound team, Mike Lachey.
Okay, but that's impressive. Like Bruce was on forever.
Yeah.
And he was the assistant, and then he'd move to a different guy, like or a gal. Like as editors moved on, Bruce would just swap and become the assistant for a different person. Correct?
Yeah.
Because Don wasn't there from the beginning, was he?
Don was
No, he
not
definitely
there
wasn't.
from the beginning because Nicole was Tom's assistant at first.
Tom McQuaid.
Yeah. And then when Nicole was promoted and got the editing seat, then Don came on, and I think that was season 4.
And Don, so this is the reason why I also want to talk about this. Don's great. I've worked with Don several times.
Yeah.
And I think I'm discovering right now that I've been mispronouncing his last name. So it's Koch is how it's spelled. Yeah. And how are you saying it?
Cook.
Yeah, I've definitely not been saying it right.
That's right.
I've been saying Coke. Don Coke.
Cook. His interesting story with Don, his father was a TV producer who was the first producer to give me a job in the industry.
What?
No way.
His dad, Ken Cook, was a producer and director, and he hired me on. My first job was as a PA for Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's insane. Sabrina the Teenage Witch starring, who was that?
Melissa Joan Hart.
Right.
Exactly. Melissa Joan Hart. Wow. That's something else. What a small industry, Todd. That's a trip.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you something. It's interesting. We were talking about the editors. We have fans sometimes say, hey, please get editors on. And I love the editing team of Supernatural. I didn't know Tom or those guys, but Nicole Forward, I knew them because that's when I started directing. So I knew Nicole, Don, Fitzpatrick, Jimmy Pickle. Turns out editors aren't people who like to come on the microphones and talk about their work that much.
Oh, big surprise. They like sitting in a dark room by themselves. 95% of the time that they're doing
I know. They're not big self-promoters, so it's been a bit of a challenge to get an editor on the show. We will. Yeah. God is our witness. Rob is our witness.
You can get them to talk. They got a lot to say. Before we depart, an interesting note about this episode.
Yes, please.
The stunt of Baby.
Oh, driving around by itself
and almost hitting Dean. It almost hits Dean, but it did hit his stunt double.
No way.
Which is in the show. You see as Todd, who is Dean's stunt double, as he jumps out of the way of the car, it clips his leg.
Whoa. Did he get hurt?
Yeah. I think he broke his leg.
No way.
Oh, Robert.
That's man.
Maybe
it did get pretty. It did look violent. It looked pretty violent to me.
How'd they do the bit with nobody driving?
I think we used a little thing called visual effects.
Oh, you just painted the guy out.
Wow.
Painted the driver out. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's even weirder that it hit the stunt guy.
Well, that was another.
There's a man behind the wheel.
That was another scene that was funny because like the way that Dean was running is kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
I know that's supposed to be intense, but I also, we were joking that it looked like the Impala was chasing him at around 12 miles an hour. I mean, it was fast, but not like deadly fast.
Until the end.
It looked like Dean could still kind of outrun it for a little bit.
Until the end, when he like crashes into the building and wow, clipped Todd's leg. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But not this Todd. This Todd
was all right.
The more manly Todd that lets cars.
I doubt there's a more manly Todd. Sorry,
lets
sir.
Cars charge it down
I
at 12
deny.
miles an hour and jumps out of the way at the very last
That's the funny thing is I'm sure the car was going faster than that. But you know that thing where like you have to have an actor outrunning the car, but there's that distance. You're like, somehow this isn't. It's like you said, everything was there. It just was slightly off to not make it as scary or funny
coverage
or whatever.
Was there, the material is there. It's like, why is this just not
working? Yeah. Well, that's a good.
People say that about our podcast. Todd, thank you for being here, and as always,
thanks for having me.
Give us the inside dope. So, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, this is Jeffrey Dean Morgan. We are going to take a quick break.
For many businesses, the holiday season can be both an exciting and stressful time. With so many balls in the air, one thing you definitely want to know you can rely on is how you're selling your products. And with Shopify, you can rest easy knowing it's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And when it comes to successful brands like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, an often overlooked secret is all the things that go on behind the scenes that make selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, if you take a peek behind that curtain, you'll see that Shopify is what makes it all possible. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. So that's more happy customers and way more sales going. It's true all the time, but especially this time of year, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use for Realm merch with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Hey, it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan again. Welcome back to the podcast.
Well, that was great. It was great. Nice to see Todd and get the lowdown on the episode.
Dude, I felt like I was grabbing him by the lapels, shaking him, going, why?
I know.
What? Where, when, and how?
And Todd, of all people, it's not his.
But he had some answers. That was great.
He did have some good answers. Yeah. And it was nice to talk about, the rest of the show. And I've always had that question about the
opening credits.
The opening credits stuff. Yeah. And
I also thought
recaps.
It was cool that we weren't wrong. Meaning, like, it wasn't like he said, oh my gosh, this was an inner office favorite.
Right.
There was all sort of a sense of like,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, always great to have Todd on and get his perspective, especially on a real wackadoodle of an episode like this one. And now, of course, it is time for, and I don't have to tell you, Rob, because you're looking at the same script I'm looking at. It's mythology. Mythology.
Okay, well, let's talk about haunted mannequins.
Let's.
Rich?
One of the strangest stories of haunted mannequins, and there are a bunch.
Oh, man.
Is about the John Lawson House in Wappingers Falls, New York. This 150-year-old house would have period-dressed mannequins appear mysteriously on the porch. The positions of the mannequins would, at times, change daily. Some believed the mannequins were possessed by the spirits of two horrific tragedies that occurred close to the house in the 1870s, a train derailment and a large town fire. One day, in 2016, the mannequins disappeared and never returned. Now, what about that train derailment and large town fire had anything to do with
mannequin
plastic people who model clothing?
I mean, that says, wow, I don't know.
With the train derailment taking stuff to Sears and Roebuck or something?
Right.
And was the town fire like a little Lego town? Like a pretend town?
And how do we know that the people who lived in the house sort of had a tradition of putting mannequins on the porch?
And how do we know they were mannequins and not just faceless people?
Could have been faceless people. That's the most realistic explanation.
Yeah.
And one day in 2016...
the truth would be funny if, like, turned out later on they realized there was a costume designer that lived in the house. And
exactly.
Doing period piece movies and working on her seamstress.
Yeah. And then she retired in 2016.
Exactly. Working on her seamstress. That's not a sentence that makes sense.
Huh.
Working on, where's the word for that? When you're doing hemming, working on the hemming of the wardrobes. There. Haha. Nailed it. Anywho, we'll follow that mythology up with fun fact.
Okay, the title of the episode is a reference to the 1987 film Mannequin, starring Andrew McCarthy and Kim Cattrall.
Did you have a crush on Kim Cattrall ever?
Maybe for Mannequin.
I thought she was cute as a button.
Yeah, I would have been 16 years old then. But then, of course, in 1991, there was a sequel, Mannequin 2, On the Move.
When you saw that one the third time, Rob, did you feel like it made more sense or less sense?
More. But here's my question, because I know you know. What was the plot of Mannequin? Anna McCarthy, she's a mannequin who comes to life.
No, wrong. That's what that's what you think it is.
Okay.
He's a man, and she's a character from a Harlequin romance.
Okay.
And they start dating, and they realize they share some of the same attributes, and hence the title Mannequin. And they end up, the end of the last shot of the movie is they end up as drawings on a romance Harlequin novel, like romance book.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Than her being like a mannequin who comes to life and he falls in love with her.
Well, that seems very 1980s, early 90s, Robbie. I don't know if that's what it is. I don't know. Did you ever see it?
I feel like I did, but I don't remember. I know enough to know that she's a mannequin who comes to life and he falls in love with her.
Yeah, and I got the pitch. You know how the pitch went in Hollywood, because this is what Hollywood does.
Especially
they went, so Splash had been a big deal.
Yeah.
Huge movie.
Right.
Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, I need an affordable Tom Hanks and something a little easier, lower concept. What else could come to life and need to be taught by a male how to live in the world? Mannequin. We'll go with the Mannequin.
Yeah, totally. Who played his buddy? He had to have a buddy. He was like, dude, are you kidding me with the Mannequin again?
I don't know. Who was the slightly portly actor du jour back then?
I was going to say, who's the Rich Pate and Rob Benedict of the day? So then this episode we're watching Supernatural's Mannequin 3, The Reckoning.
Right.
Just as a play on the fact that there's sequels to the movie Mannequin.
Yeah, exactly. Andrew McCarthy, Kim Cattrall, James Spader. Oh, I bet Meshack Taylor, buddy. It's going to be Meshack Taylor. Who's a comedy guy who was in Designing Women for years.
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense. He's a character actor.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yeah. He works at the department store. For sure.
There's also Phil Rubenstein, who works at the Mannequin Factory, kind of a lovable, rotund fella.
This might be worth a rewatch at some point. It sounds like the kind of movie you'd...
Or a first watch, if you're, say, you or me.
Well, let's get on for more fun facts. Dean offers Sam the anatomy of the dummy's heart, saying, "Be my Valentine." Well, he did this same thing with a human heart while they were in a morgue during season 5's My Bloody Valentine. I'd forgotten that. And that was just last season.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that too. The French title is La Colère des Mannequins, translates to The Mannequin's Anger.
Yeah, those mannequins are angry.
A little more on point than the Japanese translation, which loosely is The Happy Fun Boat That Kills You.
That's right. Writers Eric Carmello and Nicole Snyder mentioned Child's Play and the Twilight Zone episode Living Doll as inspirations for the idea. Originally, the idea was just killer sex dolls, but expanded to include other objects such as mannequins or cars.
Cars. Yeah. Rob, if you had to say can you put your finger on what makes this episode not work?
To me, killer sex dolls makes more sense. If they were all killer sex dolls, okay, I can get beyond. That's a concept, right? Or they were all mannequins, but they're not.
So do you think it's the story? Because I have to say something kind of controversial here. I think it's the directing. I think the directing is really weird in this one. With the slow push-ins and...
Well, it's Jeannot, who's like, we worked with him before.
And works all the time and is very talented. But I just feel like it just felt like this idea, like so many outlandish ideas in Supernatural, could have worked if approached differently. I don't think Jeannot listens to the podcast, so I don't think he will hate me for saying that.
Perhaps.
But I hate, look, people, we're on here to give our honest review. And I kept noticing how weird the shots were and how strangely staged some of the scenes felt. And, I don't know.
I'd love to talk to Eric and Nicole more about it too, because I'm sure also to me, I look at it and I go, oh, doesn't work because you have 10 people offering, you've got a network and producers.
Yeah, I would love, it'd be fun to have an addendum if we get a spotlight, if they're willing to come in and talk about that show.
Yeah.
Because we obviously love them and they're great and super talented, but that's a trippy one. So
yeah, to me, it's like an idea that put through the network.
Too many chefs in the cooking, so to speak.
Yeah, and then it just doesn't, there's no
chefs in the
line.
kitchen. I can tell that we're both out of a con weekend. Neither one of us are using English very well.
Too many chefs in the cooking. in the cooking room.
And she was out on the porch doing her seamstress. All right.
But
whatever.
yeah, it's just to me that's what it is. It's too all over the place.
Yeah.
But nevertheless,
we forge forward, pass this on to great episodes, and that we shall do next week. But for now, we're gonna put this sucker to bed.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, it was a good one, at least in terms of chatting and laughing.
Yes.
And from an organization standpoint, I feel like as a unit, we've done well.
We did well. And I feel like, look, that's what television is. It's about enjoyment. It's a
It's hot and cold, man. You do 20 some odd episodes of TV a year. 1 or 2 are not going to be home runs. Can't.
Yeah, if you do 320, not going to be all be great, but
Bingo.
But fun nevertheless.
Fun nonetheless. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week.
Indeed. This episode of Supernatural features Jared Padalecki as Sam Winchester and Jensen Ackles as Dean Winchester.
Guest stars include Cindy Sampson, Nicholas Elia, Rosalie Ward, Jake Richardson, Nicholas Carella, and Christina Sicoli.
Mannequin 3: The Reckoning was written by Eric Carmello and Nicole Snyder and directed by Jeannot Szwarc.
Editing by Tom McQuaid. Music by Jay Gruska.
Executive produced by Robert Singer, Sarah Gamble, and Eric Kripke.
This episode originally aired on February 18th, 2011.
This episode of Supernatural Then and Now is hosted and executive produced by Richard Spade Jr. and Rob Benedict.
Produced by Stephen Hine. Written by Stephen Hine and Haida Holscher.
And edited and associate produced by Trey Booty. Music provided by Tim Wynn.
The episode was recorded with the help of Sonic Fuel Studios.
This podcast is from Story Mill Media.
Follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at SPN Then and Now.
Become a member of the podcast to get early access, chat rooms with other podcast fans, and video interviews at patreon.com/SPN Then and Now.
Did you do Steve because you're Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know why that's funny? Is my son always writes his name with an exclamation point. Feels like an homage to my Steve.
It's really an homage to all Steves.
A little tip of the cap to all the Steves in the house.
Steves out there.
Story Mill Media.
Hey folks, we're the hosts of Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yen, a reader, writer, liver, and breather of comic books.
And I'm Nat. I used to know absolutely nothing about comics, but now...
So actually, I've got a quiz for you.
I still have a lot to learn about comics.
Thank you. On Comic Sans, I make Nat read some of my favorite works in the medium, including Saga, Daredevil, and the Flintstones.
And Yen talks about what makes that comic special. Sometimes it's a story, sometimes it's...
Paneling, gutters, page turns, colorings, lettering, semiotics, juxtaposition.
Okay, Professor, save it for the episodes.
You can listen to Comic Sans on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can binge our first 2 seasons. That's over 20 episodes on 20 different comics.
And we just launched Season 3, new episodes every 2 weeks.
Buffet brawlers, glory holes gone wrong, cannibalistic castration cabins, public poopers? These are just a few of the crazy topics you'll hear covered on Excuse Me, That's Illegal, the pettiest podcast around. Whether you need a break from all that murdery true crime stuff, or just enjoy hearing hilarious stories told in a unique way, I got what you need. I'm Leroy Luna, your fearless host/chauffeur. So come hop in my minivan and let's go for a ride. I promise you probably won't be disappointed. Excuse Me, That's Illegal is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically everywhere you consume podcasts, with new episodes dropping on the 10th, 20th, and 30th of the month, baby!